Explainer 5, the Jobs Report. Hi, John Rothfield with Derivative Logic. As mentioned in our series on inflation, since 1977, Fed policy has been guided by its statutory requirement to promote maximum employment as part of its so-called dual mandate. However, what is maximum employment? Unlike inflation, the Fed has no numerical target for maximum employment. Why? Because it says that direct maximum employment is not directly measurable and changes over time due to changes in the structure and dynamics of the labour market. One example of that is there is no agreed or even fixed level over time for the rate of unemployment that is consistent with low and stable inflation, a measure that is known as the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, or NAIRU. In its 2020 Statement on Goals, the Fed made a maximum employment measure a broad-based and inclusive goal, considering a wide range of indicators significant to groups that are most vulnerable to employment fluctuations. Some criticise this new feature as Fed mission creep. So all of this makes the jobs landscape one of the more contentious and subjective elements each time the Federal Market Open Committee sits down to discuss its policy settings. However, there is one report that sits above the others when it's time for the FOMC to discuss the subject. This is the so-called Employment Situation Summary, otherwise known as the Monthly Jobs Report. It is released by the Bureau of Labour Statistics on the first Friday of the month and is based on data collected during a survey week, specifically the pay period that contains the 12th of the prior month. The Employment Situation Summary actually encapsulates more than one survey. It is two surveys. One of those is a survey of establishments, the other one is a survey of households. It is not always the case that these surveys produce similar conclusions about the state of the jobs market. Firstly, the Establishment Survey, or CES, tracks payroll jobs, hours and pay at a sample of more than 600,000 work sites and agency offices throughout the country. That is a very large sample and represents about a third of the entire national labour force that is on payrolls. The headline figure from this survey is the so-called change in non-farm payrolls. The headline number is adjusted for seasonality in hiring patterns, which of course are most evident during summer and winter school breaks. The CES survey, while from a very large sample, is far from perfect. Most controversially, each February, payrolls have been revised, sometimes very significantly, for something known as the births-deaths problem. Basically, the survey coverage diminishes over a year because new businesses that form within a calendar year aren't sampled, while closing businesses, of course, stop responding to the survey. The intra-year adjustment for this issue loses accuracy if the economy is either accelerating or slowing sharply. How do we adjust for this? Enter the quarterly census of employment and wages, called the QCEW. Here, business births and deaths are not problematic because it is a more universal count of employees on payrolls based on the administrative records of the unemployment insurance tax filings, not a voluntary sample survey as the payrolls number is. From January 2026 onwards, the BLS has decided to incorporate current sample information into each month rather than making the adjustment yearly, so as to try and avoid these big annual revisions. But the trade-off now is that the monthly numbers might be more volatile and undependable than they were before. Then there is the inclusions problem. Payrolls don't capture Schedule 1 self-employed, nor workers in private households, workers on unpaid leave, contractors, cash and gig workers, freelancers and many undocumented workers are often missed. Farm work is excluded. Thus, the second survey reported in the monthly jobs report, which is based on the current population survey, or CPS, and this is otherwise known as the household survey. In it, a sample of around 60,000 eligible households is asked about their employment status each month, whether they are employed, whether they've looked for full or part-time work or otherwise, and if not, whether part of that decision is based on discouragement or temporary arrangements such as illness or looking after a family member. Since 2000, the household survey jobs have averaged about 5% more than in the payroll survey because of that higher level of inclusion. From the household survey, the headline number is the unemployment rate, otherwise known as U3. That measuring the proportion of those who've been looking for work that haven't been able to find it. The household survey is sliced and diced into segments by age, race, gender, native versus foreign-born, and even the length of unemployment. Those who are unemployed for more than 27 weeks are considered to be long-term unemployed. One key output from the household survey is the degree to which population cohorts are engaged with the jobs market. The labour force participation rate is the percentage of the civilian working age population, 16 and older, who are actively seeking work. This so-called LFPR is a key determinant, along with population trends and hours worked, of the potential growth rate of the US economy. As far as that goes, an emergent issue is the rising percent of people 55 and older in the workforce and their gradual shift into retirement, and whether and at what cost other gender, age and race cohorts can replace them. Over time, confidence in the BLS's methods and surveys have decreased. Between 2015 and 2025, for example, the response rates to the BLS's establishment survey has declined by 20 points, from roughly 60% to merely 40%. Thus have arisen a number of non-official estimates of the jobs market. Prominent among these is the ADP National Employment Report, produced in collaboration with the Stanford Digital Economy Lab. ADP is a private company specializing in employment services such as real-time payroll processing for more than 26 million employees, thus representing about 1/5 of non-farm payroll employment. So please let us know if you have topics that we should cover further in our explainer series.